Hi, my name is Grace Shalom Hopkins, and welcome to another episode of Spin Weekly. Today we are going to be discussing common wool and fleece terms and defining them. So this is a out of order list, which I tried to order it nicely originally, but I got frustrated with the different order possibilities, so it is out of order. And I am going to go through these, and if you are a member of the Spin Weekly Patreon family, there is a write-up of my whole handout here, including links where I got documentation for all of these things that you can find in the Patreon posts. If you are not a Spin Weekly Patreon member, you can join for as little as $1 and support the show through your love and your pesos and all of that good stuff in return for cool swag like my notes here. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. I filmed this once before, and there was so much stuff to cover that I just talked really fast like this through the whole thing, and then I made a mistake, and so I had to start over. And I think it was a good thing. So let's start off with, what is a fleece? The fleece is the wool from a single shearing of a single sheep. So it is the sheep outline in fiber form. Lanolin is the secretion from the sebaceous glands of sheep skin. It protects the sheep and the fiber itself. It's water repellent. They distill it out and it gets used into tons of products. If you are breastfeeding or on breastfeeders, you've probably seen it for nursing creams. If you do wool diaper covers, you use it to lanolize and waterproof. There's all kinds of lovely uses, including like bath and body products. So shearing, we touched on that just a second ago. That's done usually by a skilled artisan, a shearer. They have to train for a long time to be good at their job. It is no joke. It's not just like whacking off this sheep hair, just like people hair cutters. You know, we can think of a shearer as perhaps a fiber cosmetologist. So generally they do it in two parts, and then they roll it in this nice little blanket. And once it's been rolled into the blanket, then it's time for skirting. And when you skirt, you remove things like the breech wool, which is the legs and bum area, the tail, things like the neck, the head. Oftentimes the belly wool is very coarse. That's what you're going to kind of get rid of, along with vegetable matter. Now, the definition of vegetable matter, or VM, is vegetable matter, but it's like food and grass and sticks and gunk that the sheep got all in its fiber during its season of growth. So you're going to want to pick all that junk out. So now, on this fleece there are locks. And locks, generally they kind of stay together. You pull them out in kind of a clump, and it has a butt end, which is where it was cut from the sheep, closest to the skin, and a tip, which is the end out here. And on that lock, there may be crimp. Crimp is the wave pattern that the fiber grows in. Now, some sheep and animals like alpaca don't have a crimp. Some have a curl or are pretty straight. That depends on the breed. Breed is the kind of sheep it is, and there are lots of different breeds, like blue-faced Leicester, or Icelandic, or Rambouillet. And then you get crossbreeds, which is when you take one breed of sheep with another breed of sheep. Those sheeps make baby sheeps called lambs, and those lambs are crossbreeds. Pretty basic across the domesticated animal front as that kind of breed crossbreed terminology. Now let me scroll down in my notes here. Now you might come across the staple length, and that's the length from the butt to the tip of a lock. And the longer it is, the, I was going to say the more desirable. It depends on what you're doing. So you're going to choose woolen or worsted spinning. The length, really long fiber is usually curly or straight. Oh. I have a lot of yawns in my soul. It's because I talked so fast in that first video take. So that's what a staple length is. And then scouring. Okay, so once your fleece has been skirted, it's time to scour. Scour is kind of a fancy term for washing. It's the separation of the dirt and the vegetable matter and the lanolin from the wool or the fiber. So usually it's done in lukewarm water with a mildly alkaline solution followed by rinse. I personally use, shout out, Unicorn Power Scour. Lots of people use Dawn dish soap. That's what scouring is. We will talk about that more in the future. Now, while you're skirting, you may come across second cuts, and that's when the shearer ran over an area twice and you get little short bits. And that's no good. You want to get those out because they make really pokey yarns, or they just fall out and make a mess. They're just no bueno. When we're talking about fleece, we're also going to use a term called microns. Now, microns measure the fineness of the fiber by 1 micron is 1/millionth of a meter. So you can see how fat or skinny it is by how many millionth of a meter it is. So obviously if you are like 37 microns, it's going to be real fat and generally pretty coarse. But if you're like 17 microns, that's 17 millionths of a meter, and it's quite thin. So the lower the number, the softer or finer it is. You can also talk about handle, which is the degree of softness in a fleece. Generally, fineness and softness go together, but that's another term we can use to describe the feeling of a fleece. We can also talk about the luster of a fleece, which is the gloss or the amount of light that reflects off of the fiber. So, for example, long wools tend to be very lustrous fibers. Silk is an incredibly lustrous fiber, but not something you can shear. Let's see. You can also encounter guard hair. Pardon me. I'm filming this on the phone, so I can't do my regular cuts. You've been following my drama with that. And we're in Missouri now. It's cold weather, so now my nose is running. It's lovely. But anyway, so you may encounter guard hairs, which is the coarser and longer hair that grows on the coat. So kind of like this. So these are the down hairs, and they're usually softer and finer. And generally, the guard hairs carry a lot of the coloration. They're coarser. They protect both the down hairs and the animal below from things like the elements, UV rays, minor cuts and abrasions, that sort of thing. However, because they're straight and coarse, they're generally really pokey. So then you have to go through the dehairing process, which is just what it sounds like. You just pick out the guard hairs. Now, some things to keep in mind when you are looking at locks is the break. So if you have a break line, it's a thin spot of the fleece, and so when you test the fleece out, you kind of snap a lock, and you hear if you can hear breaking. And if you do, that's the break line. You also might find noils, felting, or cotting, which is all ways of saying that the fiber has matted together and it's a problem. If you're going to spin it, you can't, because all of those things, you can't unmat it. And then you may also find a word called yoke. Yoke is just another term for lanolin stain, so don't be concerned about that. Canary stain, however, is a yellow, brittle lock and fleece, and that's caused by a parasitic organism. So that was not a happy, healthy sheep, and it does not have a happy, healthy fleece, so you probably need to move along. I would not do that. Alright, so next we're going to go a little bit into our final category, which is the classification of the different fiber kinds. So we have long wool sheep. Now, long wool sheep usually have a long staple length with a larger fiber diameter greater than 30 microns. They're adapted to cool, high rainfall areas with abundant foliage, generally England, Scotland, New Zealand, the Falkland Islands, that kind of thing. Some of their breeds are Border Leicester, Coopworth, Cotswold, Leicester Longwool, Lincoln, and Romney. They're incredibly popular among spinners because they're a dream to spin and dye. And through breeding programs, a lot of them are very soft. Like BFL, I consider to be softer than most merinos. So now, fine wools they produce obviously fiber that is really small in diameter, and usually 20 microns or less. They account for more than 50% of the sheep in the world, and they're found all throughout Australia, South Africa, South America, the United States, and generally these are merinos. The merinos are like the most popular sheep breed ever. You can also find Rambouillets and some other sheep breeds, but they're high quality, they have a lot of longevity, they're hardy. These are great sheep. This is the commercial wool sheep. Then we have medium wool meat sheep kind of guys, or mutton type sheep. These are things like Dorset, Hampshire, Shropshire, Southdown, and Suffolk. So they have generally a coarser fiber, but not always, and they are raised primarily for their meat. So you'll find a lot of felting, lots of vegetable matter, that kind of thing. They're generally not easy to clean. So they're about 15% of the world's sheep population. And then we have carpet wool sheep. These sheep produce fiber that is 38 microns or above. They're generally double coated, so guard hair. They have adapted to extreme environmental temperatures, and they're things like Scottish blackface, Icelandic, Navajo churro. And then we have hair sheep, which are kind of a whole different bird. They don't have wool, they have hair, which is more ancestral. So they haven't evolved quite like some of the other more domesticated critters. They are generally found in Africa and the Caribbean, and because of the high temperatures there. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm losing my train of thought. Hair sheep are just weird. They account for about 10% of the world's sheep population, and yeah, my notes don't give an example. I forgot that. That's why I lost my train of thought. I was trying to think of an example here, but there is none. And with that lack of example, your question of the day is, do you know a hair breed of sheep? I am curious. I can look it up, but I want to see your answers. And how did you come across them? Did you even know that there were hair sheep in the world? I didn't know until a couple of years ago. So, like I said, if you want the notes for this, they're for the Spin Weekly Patreon family. You can find that links down below. And I want to know what is one thing you learned from this video. And I will see you guys next time with another update on like terminology and what I'm doing with my life. I think I'm gonna do like fiber processing terms next time. Before we can even get into it, we gotta get this terminology down here, people. So I will see you next time.